when Nate McKinnon scored in overtime, it took me back to winning the Stanley Cup maybe in Detroit, that feeling on the bench. And we were nowhere near the cup. We were nowhere near the championship at the World Cup, but you just had that feeling on the bench. It was so emotional.
The World Cup of Hockey decided to go with a bit of a different format in its most recent edition, and as a result, we ended up with Team North America. The man heading up Team North America was Todd McLellan. Todd, thanks for joining us. And when you think back to that tournament, what was your first sort of reaction to the idea of having this Team North America built up of the young up-and-coming stars in the National Hockey League?
Well, my initial reaction, and that was about a year or two ahead of time where they began to announce the format. And I was a little skeptical. I was wondering, how is this going to work? And guys aren't going to want to play in this team. They're going to want to play for their home countries. But as it turned out, as I left the tournament and having participated in, I thought it was a tremendous idea. What we did was take a group of real young hockey players, young superstars, and gave them the opportunity to play. Let's face it, a lot of them probably weren't going to represent Canada or the United States based on the talent pool that existed at that time. So put them together. A lot of them were still in diapers, if you will. And we went to the tournament. We quickly came together and had a tremendous time. The type of hockey we played, the courage that the young players showed throughout the tournament to go up against the world's best, and the skill level that was shown was a prelude to what we see today. These young superstars, have taken over the National Hockey League. And if it was up to me and we were going to do it again, I'd say throw that team in there again.
Was there any, not so much concern, but maybe, a little bit of uncertainty coaching so many great players, but the fact that they were, so young and still just kind of starting out their National Hockey League careers?
There were concerns. There always is when you put together the best of a peer group. The old Team Canada motto, you got to check your ego at the door, came into play. These are young players that were drafted first or second overall, or were already young superstars in the league, and they were all coming together for the first time. There was no alpha, if you will. As the days went by, there were a few that evolved, but everybody took their place. Everybody accepted their roles. And guys were playing out of position. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was a winger. So different players evolved. Austin Matthews was an extra player. We weren't even sure he was going to be on the team, if you can believe that. By the end of the tournament, I think he was on Connor McDavid's wing. So that's what happened in 2 weeks. History is made, and it's something I will never forget.
Because you had players from couple different countries, was it easy to sort of wash away any border issues because one was from one country, certain set of players, and others were from another country?
Well, territorial pride exists. We could put our head in the sand and say it doesn't, but it did exist. And the American players, they were so talented and very proud of their past and their country, and as were the Canadians. And there was some fierce rivalries between some of the players on that team. Think of World Junior tournaments and under 18, and then throughout the draft competing for positions there. And then their young NHL careers, they began to compete against each other. But I was extremely impressed, as was our staff, with the way they came together. They put all of that aside. And I think it speaks well for the future here when these teams join USA Hockey or Hockey Canada for Olympics or World Cups or World Championships. It shows the type of people they are. They're not only good players, but they're really good teammates.
People weren't really sure what to expect of Team North America because it is a new concept and was at that time. As you kind of worked your way through the round robin, what did you think of the way the team was playing and the success they were having?
Well, things happened really fast. We got together, we began to practice, and we tried to formulate some structure, give the players some idea of how we wanted to play without slowing them down. When we got there, we wanted to be a fast, skilled team. We knew that the defensive side of the puck was probably something we were going to be a little bit shy in, and I'm not talking about defensemen, but just a commitment to defending. All of these young players were racehorses. They wanted to run, they wanted to score goals. So we tried to play to that and turn them loose. As the tournament evolved, the games went by really fast. We had 3 exhibition games, played fairly well. And all of a sudden we're in the tournament, and within 3 or 4 or 5 days, I forget what it was, 3 games were gone and it was over. But within that time frame, so many memorable events happened that the game, as I call it, was the game against Sweden. It was back and forth, and it was there was so much energy in the Air Canada Centre in Toronto and in the streets. And when Nate McKinnon scored in overtime, it took me back to winning the Stanley Cup maybe in Detroit. That feeling on the bench, and we were nowhere near the cup. We were nowhere near the championship at the World Cup, but you just had that feeling on the bench. It was so emotional.
Was there a little bit of you, or maybe a lot of you, that was left wondering, as many hockey fans probably were as well, that if Team North America had advanced past the round robin, what you might have been able to do?
Well, we can all contemplate. We'll never know what the answer would be to that. But the advantage that we had over other teams is nobody expected us to do anything. We were playing with house money, if you will. We were well watched, we were well viewed, and we were well reported on because of the performances that a lot of individuals put forth and the team itself. But expectations weren't very high. And obviously the Canadian team that ended up winning it was a pretty damn good team. They had every position covered. They were strong at every facet. And had we had the opportunity, we would have went in as underdogs and tried to use that as our advantage.
From a coaching standpoint, and maybe as it continues, what the connection is like for you and those players when you see them, if you have the potential to coach them, and just sort of the bond that was built between Team North America taking part in the World Cup.
You know what? It's interesting that you mentioned that, because the connection between those players, I think, is real strong for most of them anyhow, because they were young players. They were influential at that time. They still looked for guidance, and we created great relationships. We were together for every hour, for a full month, and some real fun team building things that we did together, but also the competition level that we had. And now when you run into these guys, they are the true stars in the National League now. You think of Matthews and McKinnon and Connor and Nuge and those type of players. When you run into them, we always reminisce a little bit about it, and we catch up. So it's nice to have that bond, and I hope that we keep it for a long time.
Well, Todd, thanks for your time. It was certainly a great time, not only for Team North America, but to expose Team North America to the entire world. It was a great tournament, and you were coach of one of the great teams. Thanks again for your time today.
Thanks for having me.